Citizen science, that means involving people from the public in research. In this video, we will share some example projects, illustrate some benefits, and highlight some key areas such as communication, data quality, and inclusiveness in citizen science. Hi, I'm Tim. I'm a marine biologist, and I've been working for the past 10 years with citizen scientists and citizen science data. Okay, let's start looking at some actual projects. iNaturalist is one very prominent example of a citizen science project. People take photos of animals or plants, which are then uploaded to the iNaturalist homepage. After, the community can verify the species or make alternative suggestions. The Plastic Pirates are the project I am most familiar with. Here, school children collect and classify waste at a river close to their school and record data about environmental litter pollution. They then send in the data and photographs of the litter findings to the researchers. One study about ecosystem restoration is remarkable because school children were involved in all phases of the research cycle. They developed the research question, an adequate research method, interviewed people, analyzed interviews, and wrote an article which was published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal. Another interesting example is the initiative Our Voice, citizen science promoting health for all. Here, citizen scientists are encouraged to identify problems in their community which are related to health and well-being. In this project, they get together with other community members to actively search for solutions improving their lives. An example from linguistics is Linkscape. This project documents the linguistic landscape in public spaces. Here, the citizen scientists take photos of stickers, posters, or graffiti, and with this information, Linkscape researchers investigate the diversity of expressions and languages in different countries. Okay, now let's look at some benefits of citizen science projects. One benefit is pretty obvious. If more people participate in research, more research data can be collected. Citizen science initiatives such as the International Coastal Cleanup, Marine Debris Tracker, Marine Litter Watch, and the Litter Scientists allow us to quantify the extent of plastic pollution, identify most prominent sources of plastic waste, or even evaluate how effective legislation is to combat the plastic pollution problem. Besides this obvious benefit for research, there are other several potential benefits for the citizen scientists themselves. They can, for example, increase their scientific literacy, their environmental awareness, get expert knowledge about a certain subject, or increase their sense of self-efficacy and feel empowered by participating in citizen science studies. And these opportunities can be especially fostered when citizen science is combined with learning processes and happens, for example, in the school context. Looking at the larger societal picture, here's how I imagine citizen science to work in a perfect world. Let's say that there's an environmental or societal problem. This problem motivates citizen scientists and professional scientists to collaborate together and investigate this problem. After their successful collaboration, they have obtained valuable research findings. And both groups communicate about the outcome of the project through different channels. The citizen scientists might do this through talking to their friends and family or by sharing impressions on social media. And the professional scientists might do this through publishing results in a scientific journal. This communication and reporting about the outcome of the project informs and influences larger parts of the general public as well as decision makers. And these in turn, of course, get active and engaged on the environmental or societal problem in question. This is a bit of a naive view and more of a citizen science philosophy. But overall, citizen science has a chance to answer research questions, involve participants in a meaningful way, and also positively influence the larger societal context in which it takes place by contributing to democratize sciences. Okay, now I would like to illustrate some key areas of citizen science. First off is the topic of communication. Communication is key in citizen science studies, and some authors argue that all communication happening in this context is by definition science communication. Communication in citizen science studies of course also serves for the organization of the project. So to invite participants, to motivate them for a research activity, to train them, or to share project updates with them. One study showed that it is important to the citizen scientists how their collected research data will be used and how the research contribution will be acknowledged. Many citizen science projects also communicate through educational material.
Here you can see the educational material of the Plastic Pirates projects, which contains background information about the plastic pollution problem and also guidance for the involved school teachers. And of course, communication also occurs with other actors, for example with researchers not actively involved in the project or with funding agencies. And depending on their previous exposure to this research approach, they may need some convincing that citizen science can really deliver scientifically robust results.
Overall, many citizen science coordinators consider communication to be the main work task in citizen science projects. Here is a graphic from the Plastic Pirates project. It shows how many emails were sent and received during 7 years of the project's lifetime. Overall, there were almost 13,000 emails, and we estimated that this communication represented approximately 1,000 work hours. This therefore took up a substantial amount of the available time for the project.
And this brings us to the next topic, data quality in citizen science. This is a principal concern of many citizen science coordinators. And the reasoning behind this is simple. As citizen scientists are, by definition, people who are usually not conducting research, the quality of the research output is frequently being questioned. Issues related to data quality arise, for example, when the citizen scientists do not follow the established methods, or when the methods do not consider the citizen science context and are not adapted to the capacity or motivation of the participants. Therefore, data quality mechanisms are frequently incorporated into citizen science studies. They include, for example, training sessions for the citizen scientists, sending in photos along with data, or transparently detailing why some data had to be excluded from a scientific study. One interesting question in this context is how the quality of the data influences the publishability of the results. One study, for example, showed that only 12% of biodiversity-related citizen science studies actually published their results in peer-reviewed scientific journals. The authors of the study showed that next to data quality, questions of scale were also important, meaning that longer-lasting and larger-scale citizen science projects were more likely to publish their results. Besides the question of quality, there are several other interesting aspects surrounding citizen science data. For example, the question of data ownership. Do the data collectors, meaning the citizen scientists, have a right to decide how the data will be used? The last topic is a bit controversial. It is about inclusion aspects in citizen science studies, and the very central question on who really can participate in research. So in theory, citizen science studies are open to everyone, but in reality, it was shown that a certain type of people are more often participating in research studies. The review study showed that most participants in citizen science studies identified as being white and were privileged in terms of socioeconomic status. That means that certain minority groups are mostly excluded from these type of research projects. This extends to the context of how our current scientific system works. Power over research agendas lies with governmental authorities and research institutions and leaves little space for science on the margins. The authors of an interesting scientific article therefore differentiate between two types of citizen science projects, those initiated by research institutions and those initiated by citizens. These can be grassroots or bottom-up research initiatives in which citizens, community members or residents are concerned about, for example, environmental pollution and take research in their own hands. Yeah, and also the language I used in this video is not very inclusive. I always talked about citizen science and citizen scientists, and not all people are or understand themselves as citizens of a certain state. A lot of different terms are being used to describe the involvement of people in research, and depending on who you ask, you will get different answers on how to call this involvement. Alright, now you have a good overview of different aspects of citizen science. Of course, there's much more to it. Personally, for example, I think the question on how to illustrate the unique value for policy and decision making is really interesting, because these initiatives are already backed and supported by members of the general public. This could also help to advance on global ambitions, such as the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. If you want to know more now, there are a lot of citizen science platforms out there. So have a look and check them out. You can find the links in the video description below.